week's episode is brought to you by Support the Mountains Herbal Parasite Cleanse. This formula targets the small and large intestinal tracts and larvae, the most broad-spectrum formula available today. 100% organic, formulated by Dr. Mikio Sankey, author of the Esoteric Acupuncture series. For 10% off your first bottle, visit shopyogahub.com and use the coupon code CLEANSE at checkout. Hello and welcome to YHTV's nominated show, Magical Medical Tour. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Christina Suzuma, and with me is our wonderful medical guide, Dr. Glenn Woolman. Hello, Doc. What's up? Aha, is that black bag again?
Yes, we're going inside the doctor's bag today.
Yoo-hoo! Love it.
I know, me too, actually. I used to not love it as much, but I'm starting to like it a lot more now.
Oh, really? Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, I enjoy the in-depth one-on-one chit-chat. And what are we chit-chatting on today?
Well, before I tell you that, I want to say hello to everyone.
Nah.
Greeting. Nah, forget about it. Oh, no. Outside the doctor's bag. Greetings, everybody. Welcome to Magical Medical Tour. I'm Dr. Glenn Woolman. I will be your host, along with Christina, as we travel through another quadrant of the healthcare galaxy in search of optimal health. I want to tell you a joke that I heard the other day.
Uh-oh.
Yep. It's one of those participatory jokes. You know, like the knock-knock jokes?
Okay.
Okay. But it's not a knock-knock joke.
Oh, that's terrible. Just kidding.
It's terrible that it's not a knock-knock?
I like knock-knock jokes.
Yeah, me too. Me too. But this one isn't one. Maybe for the next inside Christina's bag, we'll have a knock-knock joke.
Okay, what's the joke?
Now I heard this from a kid. So two kids, Pete and Repeat, walk into a room. Pete leaves the room. Who's left?
Repeat.
Okay, Pete and Repeat walk into a room, and Pete leaves the room. Who's left?
You know, that other one.
Okay, great. Excellent. So the reason I brought that up is it seems like I like to Pete and repeat continuously about the 6 categories that we talk about all the time. As you know, we talk about exercise, nutrition, stress management, sleep management, patterns of behavior, and spirituality. And there is no end for me talking about this and making sure that people have a real understanding of the need to honor and address each of these categories and bring each one individually and as a group all together into an optimal place. That's the way that you're going to obtain, maintain, or regain any possibility of optimal health and life balance. And we have done many episodes on the 6 categories, and we've broken down a few of these categories and had one specific one on each. And today we're going to look at one of the categories, sleep. I want to talk about that a little bit more today, but I would suggest that to have a better understanding of sleep, go back to episodes 16 and 24. That's 16 and 24 with Dr. Andy Binder. And he will be able to explain a lot of the depth of sleep that I'm not going to do today. I'm going to mainly give what I consider just some clues on how to sleep and things like that. So that's where we're going to go today. We're going to talk about sleep.
I like that.
Yep.
I like sleep. Now, can I just check out now?
Well, it might be one of those where if I put you to sleep, I won't know if this was a successful episode or a failure as an episode.
Well, you are promoting sleep right now, so
I am promoting sleep.
There you go. Right,
as I have done with my album with my cousin Terry Woolman, where we produced Sleep Suite.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is a wonderful album, actually. Wonderful
Yeah.
CD.
Thank you.
So I just want to let everyone know at any time during the show, you can feel free to ask a question or make a comment simply by scrolling down on your screen and typing it into the comment box. And be sure to click submit, of course. Or you can call us at 818-LETS-TALK. 818 Let's Talk. And please, we invite you to share your comments, suggestions, questions with us, and we'll be sure to pass those on to our guest or Dr. Woolman in this case, and get right back to you. And when you call in, please be sure to leave your contact information so that we can get back to you. Okay, thank you, Glenn.
You're welcome. Thank you, Christina. So as I said, I'm not really going to talk about sleep as much anymore, what it is, why we need it. Those are things that we've discussed in the other episodes, and I, again, refer back to those episodes. If you have any questions, we can discuss them during the show. But what the important part is that we do sleep, and we need sleep, and we're finding out a lot more about sleep, why we need it, why we do it, what happens during sleep. And these are good things to know about. But again, we're touching just the surface. You know, when we talk about the electroencephalogram, the brain waves that we see in the different stages of sleep, where the brain waves change in their amplitude and frequency, that's how we can define the different levels of the sleep. We're in beta sleep or alpha or theta or delta sleep or REM sleep. But again, we have to realize that those are surface measurements. We put them on the scalp. Things are happening deep inside the brain that maybe we're not measuring yet. And we'll be finding out about them at another point as we get more scientific about it. But the science, the part that I think is important to me, is to know that we're learning that sleep, and this is the reason that I consider it an important category, is sleep is one of the things that's connected and linked to illnesses, certain types of illnesses, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, coronary artery disease, immune problems, problems with the immune system, infections. We're also seeing now that there's obviously genetic components to sleep, and we're just starting to break the surface on recognizing that mental illness and sleep have some commonalities. We're finding that some of the areas in the brain that produce certain types of mental illness are located right near certain parts of the brain that have to do with sleep, and they share some connections. And why is this important? It's important because the more we understand of the mechanism of how it happens, then we have the possibility of figuring out better diagnoses and better treatment. You know, most of our treatments now, at least in the past, if somebody needed sleep, we gave them something for anxiety, and that would dull their senses and they would pass out from that. But it wasn't really a good natural deep sleep. Or we gave pain medication or something, some kind of a narcotic. Some of the newer medications, Ambien and medications like that, are coming closer to producing natural sleep. We're going to the actual parts of the brain that create sleep and create wakefulness. And as we get better at this, we'll have better medications and better treatments. So when we're starting to talk about mental illness, you know, we always hear about the Prozacs and the Zolofts and many of these drugs that so many people in our country and around the world are on right now. And of course, like everything else, they have very bad side effects. Sometimes they do very good things for people and allow them to live fairly normal lives, but sometimes there are side effects which are really detrimental to having a happy life. So the more that we find out about sleep and its links to everything else, the better possibilities we'll find for treating these things in ways that are better.
Wow, I didn't realize it was linked to, you know, all the other illnesses.
Well, what happens if you picture the process, and I'm starting, you know, when I when I look at my categories, and I keep playing this game with myself, and I play it a lot when I'm talking about it to different people, I always, whichever one I'm saying, for example, exercise, I say exercise is really the most important because it does this. And then as soon as I start talking about nutrition, I say, if you think exercise is important, nutrition is even more important. And then when I say, well, if you think nutrition is important, then, stress management, got to have stress management, but they're all connected. And if what I thought about, I was thinking about this while preparing for today's episode, was that when you go to sleep, that's really the start of your day. When you get up and do things, you've had the sleep that prepares you to go out and face the day. And so if you have a great sleep, then you face the day in a much better manner. But if you have a very bad sleep, you wake up a little too early, you don't have time for breakfast, that kills the nutrition aspect. You're really tired, you're too tired to go and work out that day. That kills or affects in some way the exercise aspect. You get into a situation at work where you're not agreeing with your boss or a fellow coworker, and that causes stress. That does things, and it keeps going on and on and on. And then it's time to go to sleep again, and you're exhausted, but you're wired because you're worried about the stress, and you haven't eaten, and you're hungry, and so they all are connected. But I think sleep is probably the beginning for me now. We need important sleep. Lots of things happen during sleep, and we're learning more about that. It seems like we can restore things in our body. We can learn things in sleep, and we can adapt to things in sleep. Again, looking back to some of the other episodes, we'll find out more about that. But I do want to talk about giving some clues today on how to sleep. How's that sound to you?
On how to sleep.
Yes, just my suggestions on things. And, I've done a lot of research. I've talked with a lot of people that are sleep specialists and everything else. But so I've put together what I believe is a good idea. Now, there's obviously many different things, and I'm not necessarily going to cover everything. Somebody might be able to call in and say, well, but what about this? And I will say, oh, great idea. I didn't get a chance to talk about that. So thank you for calling in.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. So before talking about sleep, everyone should analyze how they sleep. And you can do that through, you could do a sleep journal. You can just analyze it during the day when you're awake and at night. If you get into bed at a certain time every night and you hit the pillow and then a few minutes you're asleep, you don't wake up for 8-9 hours, you wake up totally refreshed and happy throughout the day, then your sleep is good and you don't need to be too concerned about what we're talking about today, although there might be something in it for you because every once in a while you may have some trouble sleeping and this may help a little bit. But on the other hand, if you have trouble sleeping all night, you wake up many times during the night, during the day, you're yawning all the time, you're dreaming about sleep while you're working, you're wanting to take a nap and that's all you're thinking about is sleep, then you didn't get enough sleep. And as you're analyzing yourself, and if you are with a partner and that partner can give advice to you about, well, last night I was listening to your breathing and you were snoring and suddenly you stopped snoring multiple times, that's evidence of potential what we call sleep apnea. And that's a very important and potentially life-threatening illness and sleep disorder. And there are many sleep disorders. There's probably around 100 of them, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. But it's important to recognize if you do have a sleep disorder and potentially get to a sleep doctor, or at least speak to your own doctor about it. So the first thing in how to sleep, I think, is honor sleep. You have to start realizing how important it is. And, I don't know if I need to say much about that, but most people nowadays are saying, oh, I don't need to sleep. You hear that from people. I only need 2 hours of sleep a night. all of the things that are putting sleep down, some people say that, if you're sleeping, you're wasting time. There's a lot more things to do. So I think the first step is honor sleep. And then the second step is to give yourself permission to go to bed. Sometimes a student may say, I have to keep studying, I have an exam, or a person in the job, at a job, may say, I have to fill out this report or do this. I can't go to sleep. You need to give yourself permission to go to bed. The third thing, and some of these are pretty simple and easy, but it's one of those things that you just don't think about because it's so simple and easy that you have to do that. Try and keep regular hours. This is pretty important. Dr. Binder says to us, we always used to think you have to go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time. He said in one of our episodes that it isn't necessarily as important to go to sleep at the same time, but it's always important to wake up at the same time. And I think that just keeping regular hours within a degree or so, most of the time you go to bed at 10 o'clock. If you go to bed at 10:30 or 9:45, that's not a big deal. If you wake up at 8 o'clock every morning, and sometimes you wake up at 7:45 or 8:15, may not be as big a deal. But it's all about setting our clocks. We have these internal clocks inside of us. There's a clock for sleeping and there's a clock for waking. And when I say clocks, it's really a metaphor. It's really part of cellular structure that produces chemicals that are chemicals that either make you wake up or help you to go to sleep. And you can almost imagine a seesaw, a children's seesaw, where on each end of the seesaw is a bucket. And one bucket is filled with all of the chemistry that helps you go to sleep. And at that point, the bucket that might be up in the air would be the one that's helping you to wake up, and that's empty. But during the night, as you're using up all of the sleep chemistry in the grounded seesaw and bucket, that one starts to rise, and the chemistry in the bucket for wakefulness starts lowering down. And when that hits the ground, metaphorically, that's when you're awake. So you've got these two balances. And light is a very important aspect of that. But also, so is eating, and so is exercise, and so is stress, because these are all about hormones and chemistry that go on within the brain and the body. So it's very important to try and keep regular hours. I like to spend a little time, and of course, Christina, if you have any questions about any of these or statements or additions, obviously jump right in.
Well, I have a question. I know people who, like, it could be an issue that they're dealing with, but how they sleep for maybe 4 or 5 hours, and then they'll wake up. And then they might stay awake for 2 hours because they can't sleep, and then they go back to sleep for another 3 hours or so. And they do get their 8 or 9 hours of sleep, but they have this break in between.
Right, and go ahead.
Oh, does that kind of throw something off?
Sometimes it can, because you need to spend certain amount of time in REM sleep and deep delta sleep. Usually sleep goes in cycles throughout the night. It's about a 90-minute cycle where you go from awake down into not really down, but into this deepest sleep. Then you come back to REM sleep. And if you could see on a scale, it goes up and down in cycles for about 90 minutes. And then you drop back down again and then come into REM sleep and then drop into delta. And it's important to be in certain of these realms for certain amounts of time. That's where the different things happen. A lot of the dreaming happens in the REM sleep. A lot of the restoration seems to happen in the delta sleep. So if that person goes to sleep and gets 4 hours and a couple of good cycles, and then they're up for a little while and they go back to sleep and they get back into those and they do cover those areas, then they'll be fine. And it's not a problem. And I'm going to talk about a few things in a while about what to do if you actually do wake up. But yes, if you have your certain amount, and again, the key here is, how are you during the day? That will tell you if you're, as I said, if you're awake and you're active and energetic and happy and not stressed out and eating well because all is good and you had a good night's sleep, that's fine. If you're tired, yawning, can't concentrate, can't focus, can't do anything, not enough energy for the things that you need to do, then that tells you that no matter how you're sleeping, it's not a good one.
That means go back to sleep.
Exactly. And it means to start changing your, and you know what we talk about, patterns of behavior.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And this is why I say honor sleep. Because if you're not getting enough sleep and you don't honor it and try and say, I've got to change this so I can sleep better so all the other things can work, then you're hurting yourself and you're going to eventually have problems that are going to be health related.
Okay, so there's only, well, so far I think you have 4 things, right? Honor sleep, give yourself permission to sleep, and then regular hours.
Right. So now what we want to talk about is creating a restful place to sleep. That's very important. That's one of the most important parts of it. You have to have a place that has darkness, because light is the key to being awake and to not being asleep too well. It has to be a dark room, or it should be as dark as possible. And in fact, even suggesting that you change the lights in your bedroom, the wattage of the lights in your bedroom. So if you do have to turn on the light at some point, it's a lower light and it's not going to wake you up startlingly and then have difficulty going back to sleep. You also need to look at the temperature of the room. Probably should be a little bit cool, but not freezing, and it should not be hot where you're sweating and uncomfortable. And then the sound, it should be as soundproof as possible. Some people use white sounds. They'll turn on the radio between 2 stations, or they'll have sound machines that sound like a loon in the forest, or an ocean, or rain, or running water, those kind of sounds, or have no sound. Or of course, listen to Sleep Suite. That would be the perfect sound. So making sure that the area is a restful place to be. And in that process of making sure it's a restful place to be, it's also important to have a bed and a pillow that you love. And I can't stress this enough. It almost is the moment you get into bed, if you go, this is great, I love being here, then you're doing it correctly. And it's very important to spend money, if you have it, on a good bed. And that includes something for your posture. Make sure that when you get out of bed, you're not hurting all the time. But whatever it is, have a good bed and have a good pillow. And in the area of the pillow, very important to make sure that you're not allergic to something within either the bedding or the pillow stuffing. Some pillows are created in other countries where there are toxins that are inside of either the foam or the feathers or whatever the material is made of. It's very important to know that. People sometimes can't figure out why they wake up every morning with a lot of mucus and a stuffy nose and runny eyes. And they're trying to look at allergies out in the world and flowers and other things like that. But it may turn out to be your pillow, or your sheets, or your bedding. So very important to get something ideal for yourself. Any thoughts?
That's something that I think, because I dealt with allergies most of my life, I mean, I think that's really, really important. My concern, and I've seen this over and over again, Glenn, is where, and I understand about the darkness and the room temperature and the sounds, but I've also seen where I've seen parents who raise their children to sleep in a very dark room, perfect temperatures, perfect sound, which is either nothing or soft music.
Right.
That child grows up and they cannot sleep in any other type of situation. Which that, for me, it's not the, how can I say, is not the if I can say, average lifestyle, where when you're out and about, or you end up somewhere like you're visiting someone, or you want to go camping one day. Well, I've seen these children go through, and the parents, because the children are going through such hardship, because they can't sleep in another situation. They can't get themselves, adjusted in any way, that they are so grumpy all during their trip that the parents actually go wacko because, if the children are not getting sleep, you better believe you're not getting sleep. Right. Because the situation is not fully dark. You're trying to camp, and there is, even though at night is dark, but there's stars, there's sounds, there's, whole other things, or, and even in a hotel, it's the same thing. It's not always dark. It's not always that perfect home situation that you can give them. So
I like that. It's a very interesting point, except I would say there are still things that you can do. There are night masks and a few other things for darkness. And if you look about it, we know that if we average in a 24-hour day 8 hours of sleep, that's a third of the day. So if we extrapolate that into our life, that's a third of our life. And if almost a third of your life you're sleeping well because you're at home, and you don't sleep too well camping, that's okay. It's much more important to have the overall bigger picture. Although I'm not a parent traveling with my children, so I speak freely in that area. But I understand it, and it makes sense. But again, as the child becomes older, if they have an understanding of how good it is to sleep and have a good night's sleep, then as an adult, they can change their patterns of behavior when they get into other situations and figure it out. Kids, I would say, they're a little more adaptable. They're going to sleep. They're not most of the time, obviously. I can't say all the time, but I would say that still it's a better idea to have ideal sleep conditions as much as possible for a better night's sleep. But I appreciate what you're saying there. And again, you can, if you're going camping, part of it is the excitement of that process anyway. But if you're at a hotel, you want to bring a night goggles or night mask and earplugs. When you go on, think about what happens if you get on an airplane or something. Sometimes they may give you a mask and slippers and earplugs and a few other things to help with the sound and to help with the sight and everything else. So there are adaptable ways you can change, but I think overall it's important to get that good night's sleep in the place that you are the most.
Okay.
Do we agree to disagree on that?
I agree with you that the sleep is so important. That is number one. I do agree on that. I just, there's times that I feel just experiencing and watching the ebb and flow. I believe as an adult, especially because I was one that would get 2-3 hours of sleep and I would just go the next day. My energy levels were high. I could think clearly. I could think straight. It was just the way my body was made up as an individual. And I know as the years have gone on, yes, I do need a lot more sleep. I do need that restful period. The more I meditate, the more so I even need my rest. But, really watching for children, their adaptability, I feel is almost, there are some good habits to build. And for me, some of the good habits is, the consistency of good rest, but the environment, if they are exposed to different environments from an early age, which, a child is how you mold that child to be. So, it's so easy, for my child to actually sleep in almost any situation with any sound, whether it be on a plane, in a car, because it was always that way. It was always the way where, okay, this room is full of noise and you're sleeping in my office right now and I have to continue working. And now it's like he can sleep anywhere. It's amazing. Light, dark, it doesn't matter. It's like, I'm tired now. Okay, put your head down, go to sleep. Done.
No, that's perfect.
Yeah, and whereas the ones that were at the extreme of that perfect room, that perfect balance at that young age, they're not. It was so hard for them to adapt out of it because it's almost like the foundation was laid. And, as teenagers, it's like, oh, if I don't have a dark room, if I don't have this, if I don't have that, it's really hard to sleep. And and I've kind of, just looking at the young kids becoming teenagers and having conversations with them, like, oh, do you have trouble doing that? Yeah, I do. I do. It's like, how does your son just sleep anywhere? I have never been able to do that. And then I talk to the parents and see what they've done. And oh yeah, it was the perfect environment. And now they can't sleep anywhere.
Well,
so it's interesting, isn't it?
It is, definitely. And I would say that, again, you go back to the first three things. First of all, if you have a child and you teach them to honor sleep, that's going to be the first thing. So they'll be able to adapt. Give yourself permission to sleep. And again, more adaptable, try and keep regular hours. So if teaching them to adapt and to honor it and all of the other things that we talk about, somehow they will be able to get to sleep. And if for some reason they can't get to sleep in one night, that's okay.
Yeah.
For one, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We just got home at 2 a.m, but you have to wake up at 6. No,
I mean, that does happen. Yeah. And everybody becomes, if you become a college student, every once in a while you put in an all-nighter.
That's right.
So things do happen with that. Yeah. It's in the bigger picture. Overall, if you miss one night of sleep, your body will make up for that, and you get you through it. But if you're missing every night of sleep, that's where this is about.
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah, I would also say make sure you don't. And this is a really tough one for a lot of people. Don't have pets in your bed.
Oh, that's the easiest one for me.
Yeah. Well,
when you've had a whole childhood of allergies, that's the first thing. I mean, no pets, almost nobody, no pets.
Yeah. No, I agree. But there are some people, are pet lovers. It's hard not to.
Yeah. That's tough because they trek in so much stuff from the outside, all the toxins from the outside in their fur. We forget about that, don't we?
Yeah. And all of the things that I talk about here are in general. If you're a person that can sleep no matter what, then you don't have to worry too much about it. You've got it down and you don't have to figure out the other stuff. These are for people that are having a little bit of trouble sleeping and want to figure out maybe some things that they can do. So as you're moving through the day, remember having good habits during the day by eating correctly at the right times, exercising at the right times, doing all the good things that you do, and cutting down on stimulants like nicotine and caffeine and alcohol. Kabir Southwick and Tracy Harrison have talked about drinking caffeine and things like that at certain times of the day, and the half-life of caffeine. It seems like people that are drinking coffee just before they go to sleep, if those are people that can do that, that's fine. But for many of us, that caffeine has a very long half-life. So if you're drinking coffee sometime after noon and you go to sleep around 9 o'clock, there's a possibility that caffeine will still be in, and that could be a reason if you're having trouble sleeping. So another one is as you start preparing for bed, start closing down in terms of lights around the house, in terms of external stimuli, too much loud music. Start just quieting down and taking it easy, maybe even an hour to 2 before you go to bed. Shutting lights down and getting your body adjusted so that it's preparing for bed and nothing else. I also suggest either taking a hot bath or a shower before bed. It seems like that kind of relaxes. I do that as a ritual in a way. It washes off the day for me. It's a little bit of a meditation and it relaxes me. But they also say after the hot shower or the hot bath, sometimes cooling the brain down helps it sleep. So if you're really having trouble sleeping and you want to try something else, maybe a towel ice pack around your head. And what I mean by that is you could take a towel, wet it, put it in the freezer for about 45 minutes, take it out when it's still malleable, wrap it around your head for a little while, cool the brain down. And sometimes this will help you to sleep a little better.
Oh, that's a new one. I like that.
You like that, huh?
Yeah. Even though I can usually sleep really well anyway.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I like that.
Well, again, this is, if I meet somebody that says, just about an hour before I go to sleep, I have a big cappuccino, frappe, latte, mocha, Red Bull, Chelino,
Red Bull.
a Red Bull Chelino, and I sleep really well with that.
Oh, dear.
But I like to do a little kickboxing exercise and then read about, some really adventurous activity that stimulate you, and you still sleep. This is not necessarily for you, and you don't have to change too many things.
That was me about 20 years ago. Okay.
Yeah, that was a lot of us. So when you finally get into bed and you've done all the things and you're about to shut down, what I like to do first is get into bed, and no matter what position you sleep in, if you sleep on your abdomen, if you sleep on a side, somewhat of a side, a fetal position, or on your back, I always like to suggest that people start out on their back just for a few minutes to allow yourself the transition from being awake and during the day and getting into, now I'm ready to honor sleep. And I just think about it for a few minutes. And what I do is I take my focus and I stop focusing on all the things that are causing anxiety and stresses and worries about the day before, the day after, whatever. And I start to focus in on my body. And I look at, is anything hurting anywhere? Do I need to do any healing during sleep? And if nothing is hurting, I start to relax my body. And there are different ways of doing this. Cognitive exercises, you can start at the feet and relax everything and work your way up, or start at the head and work your way down, but just relax the body. And after the body, if you've checked in with the body and nothing hurting or nothing to be healed, or something is hurting and you need to deal with that and start the healing, then you go to your mind and you start just quieting the mind down, stopping to think of a lot of the things that are going on. And this takes practice. It's not easy to do. But one of the things that we're finding is that there's actually chemistry that causes anxiety. And if you're worried about something and this chemistry gets into your bloodstream and goes up to your brain, that's going to keep you awake. So by being aware of that and working on that, you start to quiet your mind down. And then finally, spirit. And what I do for the spirit part is I imagine this beautiful light, and I change the color of it depending on what's going on in my life and that day, whatever color comes to me or I need. And I picture that light in my brain. My whole brain is just covered with that light. And I slowly turn the dimmer switch, and I turn the light off inside my brain. And at that point, I try to go to sleep, and I stay that way. And sometimes I'll wake up and then go into the position that I usually sleep in on my side, and then you can do the same thing. So that's how I go to sleep. If you awaken in the middle of the night because of either thirst or bathroom needs, again, remember that the light is your enemy for sleep. So when you do wake up, try not to turn on a light, or if you have to turn one on, make sure it's a really low intensity light. And I think I've said this before, but if you can keep your eyes squinted and in fact keep one eye closed and maybe just allow a little light so that you don't walk into closets or walk into doors, then just a little bit of light. The less light that comes in, the better off you'll be. Because the more light that comes in, the more chance your body is going to get a message in your brain saying, it's time to wake up, even though you know it isn't. So try and keep it dark. And I would also say sometimes, even if it's about thirst and you recognize that, keep a glass of water by your bed and just have a little sip so you don't have to get out of bed to take care of that need. I also suggest that water by the bed when you wake up in the morning, and we'll talk about waking up in a few minutes, is have a little sip of that water before you start anything else. If you do that and then you go back in and you get back to sleep, that's fine. You wake up in the morning. But then there's another possibility that you can't get back to sleep at that moment. And what I suggest then is, instead of trying to be in the bed tossing and turning, it's very important that we use the bed for two things: one for sleep and one for intimate relations. Other things are not recommended. You shouldn't necessarily read in bed. And of course, I know there are people that love to read in bed and then that's how they sleep. Those people, don't change your pattern of behavior if it's working. But if you can't figure out why you're not sleeping and you're just reading in bed, maybe you need to look at that pattern. If you are awake and you can't get back to sleep, get out of the bed and go do some minimally energetic, minimally light requiring program. If you're knitting or you just want to sit out of the bed for a little while, do some little task that doesn't keep you energized, doesn't make you think too much, but just gets you tired and back to bed. You have to keep fooling the brain, essentially. And when you're ready, you go back to bed, if you can. If not, then you have to start analyzing the sleep process and look to see, and maybe you need to talk to your doctor about sleep, and eventually maybe you need to go to see a sleep doctor. So that's basically the whole process of going to sleep. Is there anything that you want to talk about before we talk about the next aspect?
No, I think you've covered it really well. Yeah. It's interesting how if those people who cannot get back to sleep, what they can do, or it's really, I find it really, they have a hard time just making a decision what it is they're going to do, whether or not they're going to get up or try again, and it's such a break in their evening.
That's right. And if it's a problem, that's why some people recommend, if you do have a problem with sleep or you're recognizing it, develop a sleep journal and write about it and talk about it with family or friends, or do your own research on the internet, or go to your doctor and they may recommend, based on the sleep journal that you're talking about, that you might need to do some cognitive behavioral exercises, count backwards from something, or count sheep or something like that. There are many things that can be done on many levels, scientific and Zen related. Sometimes you could just go into a Zen meditative state and picture that sleep is like a river, and you just want to come to the bank and float into the river, and that will help some people sleep. But if you're not sleeping with all of this and you keep your journal, then you can go and talk to your doctor about it and see if you can get sleep, because it's so important. So the thing that people don't talk about a lot, and I like to talk about, is how to wake up. I think that's as important as many of the other things we do. Getting back to sleep for a minute, I remember Patrick Howell, when we spoke with him, he talked about things to do before going to sleep, writing down a few things. Remember, in one of our episodes, talked about how your day was, or
gratitude,
things like that.
The 3 points of gratitude. I still do that.
Right, exactly. Exactly. But then and that's a good thing to do. Develop some rituals. One of the things that you can do as you go to sleep is, before you close down your mind, just honor the mind, what you did today, and in your spirit, honor how you were today, and was it a good day, and be thankful for that good day. And then we talk about waking up, and this is important for me. The way that I wake up is that as soon as my consciousness knows that I'm awake, and my mind knows that I'm awake, I make sure that I keep my eyes closed. And the first thing I do is kind of welcome myself back to life and honoring spirit, etc., just for a few moments. But while you're still with your eyes closed, don't get too energetic. The first thing I would like you to do is to make this connection between the cells and the mind. And what I mean, you know what I mean by cells, that's everywhere in the body. So again, just like we did before we went to bed, where you checked your body out, do not move, but just go through an entire scan of your body from your feet all the way up to your head and see if anything feels abnormal or if anything hurts without movement. And because your eyes aren't up yet, your eyes aren't open, and you can focus a lot more and you're not thinking about other things that you have to do, you can really connect more easily to your cells and to everything and make sure nothing is hurting with no movement. When you realize that nothing is hurting without any movement, then slowly go through the same process again, but this time move everything slowly. So you move your toes a little bit. Did that hurt? No, good. Then you move your ankles. Did that hurt? No, you just move them around a little bit. Nothing really radical, just slight, ever so slight movements. Go up your legs into your knees, up to your hips, move your pelvis back and forth, up and down, side to side. Try and move your back just a little bit, just little bitty twists, arms, fingers, elbows, shoulders, wrists, up into your neck and up into your head. If you see that something hurts, then be aware of that and be careful about that during the day. Recognize that and check it out. If nothing is hurting, then you move to the next portion where you can move a little more. But usually once you've moved a little bit, then you know that nothing is hurting. Then it's time to do the next thing. Now, so you've connected your body, now you start connecting your mind, and you've been working with your mind, and you're starting to think about the day. And as you're about to wake up, you want to connect your spirit back into the whole process. And what I like to do is declare the day with some kind of an affirmation and make it different every day. You know, Marissa Pay, when we spoke with her, she had, I think, 7 things that she would say before she would get out of bed. She would discuss a number of things that she would do. I don't necessarily know that you need to do 7. 1 is fine for me, but if you want to do 7 or 25, whatever it takes to make you feel good and to kind of declare the day, do that. Do something like that. Today, I want to make people laugh a lot. And so that's going to be one of my goals for today. And so after I've done all that, and again, my eyes are still closed through this whole process, what I then like to do, if you remember correctly, just before we went to bed, we took that light in our brain and dimmed it to as much darkness as we can. What I then like to do is my final aspect is I begin to picture that light in my brain, and I start turning on the dimmer switch. And so it's getting brighter and brighter and brighter. And when it gets to the amount of brightness that I feel is right, then I open my eyes for the first time and I let out the light from inside of me, and it mixes with the light of the day. I'm ready for the day. I get out of bed slowly, maybe have that little glass of water, and then start the day with good digestion. And of course, it's very important that within this whole process, we talked about keeping regular hours. So if you know that you need to be at work at a certain hour, then you need to make sure that you have enough sleep so that you can get up and do some kind of a ritual so that you're not jumping out of bed, running out of bed, and starting your day frenetically and without purpose.
Uh-oh.
There you go.
Well, as you were saying about lying in bed and turning up the dimmer switch, I think there was a time in my life where, yeah, I could do that. I could do that. There were no alarms. There were no times that I had to be somewhere, or appointments, etc. And I thought, okay, so what do we do when the alarm goes off?
Mm-hmm.
Either we have to turn it off, right?
Well, we can have a theory right now. One of the things, yes, you don't necessarily have to turn it off. You can have different types of alarms that will go off. And it could be something that's very soothing rather than very jarring. The other theory that you can ask yourself is, or you could say, is if you need an alarm to wake up, it means you didn't get enough sleep. So you should potentially wake up naturally. I'll go back to your camping out. Very few people bring an alarm clock when they camp out. It's because we go back to a primitive nature where we used to be awake during the day and we used to sleep as soon as the sun went down. Thomas Edison obviously changed that for all of us. Now we can
work through the night.
Yeah, we can eliminate darkness. There's no more darkness. So now it becomes much more of a challenge for all of us.
Well, also because like during the day, we're working, we're at a whole different pace of life. Whereas when we're camping or on holiday, a holiday where you're not rushing around on a tour, but on a holiday where you're rested. And I know this because when I do go on holiday where I turn everything off, it is that way. I wake up naturally by 8:00 or 7:30 naturally, right? But also I haven't had the stress of the day, the stresses of the day of running a company, making it on time, running a child to and from, their things and homework and, those schedules that are just quite intense. So even though we might want to go to bed by 9:00, 9 hours later, it's like, okay, I need that alarm to wake me up.
Yes, of course. Again, this is Magical Medical Tour, so it's an ideal world where everything is perfect.
Does that exist? Optimal Health does, but I don't.
No, it exists. It exists every Tuesday at 10:30.
Yes, your moment of magic.
Yes, that's right. But again, it goes back to that very first thing: honor sleep. Realize the importance of it. Science is starting to realize the importance of it. And if you honor it and realize the importance in the sense that it has to do with just the things that you mentioned, you have to run a business, you have to run a family, you have lots of things to do. Would you rather be doing that after a good night's sleep or on a terrible night? We talk about who would you rather have? Would you rather have the neurosurgeon that's going to operate on your brain tumor? Would you rather they had a good night's sleep the night before, or no big deal, just wake up with that alarm clock and go to work on my brain? Would you rather have a school bus driver, have a good night's sleep when you put your kid on that bus and they're on their way to work? You want to know or feel that school bus driver had a good night's sleep. So it's important for all of us because it's really reached epidemic proportions. We're sleep deprived in our society. Mm-hmm. We don't honor it as much anymore as we did hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years ago. Mm-hmm. We're understanding more about it now, but we're honoring it less, and we're trying to figure out ways to eliminate it.
But you're absolutely right. Not even hundreds and hundreds of years ago. I mean, I think about 50 years ago. When my parents were working, there were no computers at the time. Well, they were, but not accessible to the common person. And before television made its way, to our living rooms and our homes, I think it was a very different lifestyle. And that wasn't that long ago when you think of it. Now true. People can watch. People have televisions in their bedrooms now.
Yes, and that's why I say that, and again, one of the things we talked about is use the bed for sleeping and intimate relations. Don't use it for crossword puzzles, and don't use it for eating, and don't use it for reading, and don't use it for many things. Unless, again, as I said, if you're the person that can do all those things and still get a great night's sleep, that's okay for you. But if you're doing those things and you can't figure out why you're not getting a good night's sleep, because you're sending mixed messages to your brain. If you're sending the message, the bed is the place where I do crossword puzzles. No, it should be the bed is the place where you sleep. And so you don't want to watch too much television in there. You don't want it to be an entertainment center, except for the intimate relations part. That could be entertaining. but I also believe that's a perfect part for sleep. I left that out. That should have been right after honor sleep. You should
Honor intimacy. Okay.
honor intimacy, because nothing better. It burns calories. It's a little bit of exercise. It's intimate. It's loving. It's emotional. And then cuddling afterwards and spooning is a great way to go to sleep.
There you go. Yes, it's this is an interesting moment of sleep. Now I just want to go to sleep.
Excellent. Excellent. See, right now.
The afternoon siesta, right?
Well, again, when we look at the science of sleep, we start understanding chemistry, and we can see that sometimes after a meal, certain chemistry happens and makes you a little bit sleepy. Sometimes, a lot of this has to do with cortisol levels and adrenaline, and many of the hormones in our body go up and down. They're like a sine wave, and you get this mid-morning. Remember, we talked about the seesaw, right? And on one side of the seesaw is the chemistry for sleep. On the other side of the seesaw is the chemistry to stay awake. Well, sometimes during the day, throughout the cycle of the day, there's a little bit of that surge of the sleep chemistry that makes you a little sleepy. Sometimes if you wake up at 7 or 8 in the morning, you might have that experience around 11 o'clock, getting a little tired for a little while. But then it goes away if you get through it. And sometimes if you haven't had much sleep, you can also play with that a little bit and say, wow, I'm really tired all day. And then suddenly at some point, you really get a surge of energy and you don't recognize that you're tired anymore. So all of this is about chemistry, and it's really the chemistry of the body is trying to make the body healthy. That's why the body has that chemistry. So the body needs sleep and it needs to be awake. And it's important to honor both.
Yes, I was just recently talking about those surges. It's like, okay, 10:30, 11 o'clock. All right, I'm checking out. No, it's
Right.
like, okay, it's interesting. It's interesting what the body wants to do, but also what I also find like what you said about nutrition and diet during the day.
Mhm.
I mean, clearly, when we don't eat a certain way and nutritiously, clearly it shows up that next day. It's
Right.
like the body is choked, and it just is striving to find the energy because what was consumed the night before wasn't very healthy.
It is all about health, and that's why I always and repeat my six categories. It's just so important, and they're so connected, and they're all connected to health. That's the key here. They're all connected to health, and you've got to honor all of them. If you get great night's sleep every night, but you don't eat well, you don't exercise, and you're always stressed out, even though you could say, but I sleep really well, you're not going to be healthy. And you could take each one of those categories and say, boy, I deal with stress really well, but I don't eat well, I don't sleep well, and I never exercise. You're not going to be healthy. And every one of those, they're linked together. And sleep, interestingly, in our society, we're so willing to go to a doctor and spend hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars on seeing the doctor, getting medications, getting blood tests to find out how much our cholesterol is, and trying to fix our cholesterol levels. And we have this thing here that we can do for free.
That's right.
It costs nothing. It's just honoring it and developing patterns of behavior that allow one to sleep.
I agree.
One of the little clues about, if you want to know how quickly you go to sleep, because that's part of your sleep journal, do you lie in bed for hours, or do you hit the bed and the pillow and you're asleep? There's a fork test or a spoon test you could take. Put the spoon in your hand and have it over the bed, so that when you fall asleep, it'll fall out of your hand, and that jarring will wake you up. And then you can time it, and you can say, well, I went to bed at 10 o'clock, and wow, I heard that noise. It woke me up. Now it's 10:15. So you know that it took you about 15 minutes to go to sleep. because
Oh,
usually
interesting.
you don't know when you're asleep.
Well, I do believe there is an iPhone app now
Of course, of course.
that you put beside your bed, and it actually regulates, if you are when you fall asleep and when you go through the different states of sleep. Can you imagine?
Yeah, I don't know if it actually regulates them. I think
It
it
doesn't
might
regulate. It registers.
registers them.
Sorry, yeah,
Right,
not regulates.
right. Yeah. If we had that app, that would be a really good app to have if we
Yes,
could
then I wouldn't have
regulate.
to worry about my sleep apnea, would
Right.
I?
Yes, that's definitely
Oh my goodness. Well, Dr. Woolman, this has been a nice, wonderful moment of sleep.
sleep.
Do you have a tip for us today?
You know, I was thinking about a tip, and I was thinking about words that we use and how we abide by those words. And you have a child, and I know this that was happened when I was a child, and I listened to others. What's the thing that parents say to their child when it's time? It's nighttime. They usually say, "Go to bed, go to sleep," right? As if
Hmm.
sleep is a place to go. It's not really a place to go.
Hmm.
And the same thing is what happens when you're it's time it's in the morning and you got to get your child ready for school. What do you go in? You go in and yell into the room. What do you say?
Good
Wake up.
morning.
Wake up. Good morning is a good one. But a lot of times wake up.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
and
I see.
you're not really waking up. You're not moving anywhere. You know, when you go to sleep, you're lying in bed and you're going somewhere, but you're not moving. So how do you go somewhere when you're not moving? You can't
Oh,
go to
that's
sleep.
funny. Yes.
And how do you, when you wake up, you're still in the
Get up.
same position. So what I think my health tip would be from, I think there's a Chinese saying, loosely translated, and you may be better for this, is it's eat, eat, sleep, sleep. And it basically means when you're eating, just eat. When you're sleeping, just sleep. So I would say, of course, you know, usually the Chinese sayings don't need any more interpretation. They speak for themselves. But of course, I'm not going to sit with that. I'm going to expound on it. I would say, so don't go to sleep, just be asleep. And don't wake up, just be awake. So be asleep, be awake. When you're sleeping, that's what you need to do and do it really well. When you're awake, be totally awake. And that includes mindfulness and everything else. So all of the things about be asleep has to do with the things we talked about today. Setting up your room, you know, dimming the lights, quieting down, be asleep or be awake.
Hmm.
Don't
That's
go
lovely.
anywhere, just be.
That's lovely. Ah, interesting. So I have things to contemplate now. Because when you said, "What do you say to your child?" I go, "It's time for bed." No, no, it's time. It's time for our mala beads now. It's like,
Well,
what do we say?
you're the total exception to the
It's
rule.
so strange. It's like even wake up. I kiss my child awake. I kiss him asleep. I mean, it's like if I.
Okay, I can't talk to you anymore.
I know. It's like,
You,
how do you wake up your child? Well, I give him kisses on his neck and his toes, and I whisper, "I love you," and I get a "I love you" back. It's like, yeah, even before the good morning.
well,
It's like,
you just gave me a great idea. We're going to have a Christina app.
Christina.
So everyone can have a Christina app, and it can kiss you before you go to sleep, and then it kisses your toes in the morning when you awaken. Set your Christina app
I
for.
know. I go, oh, what is my child going to be like when he grows up?
I think one of these days we need to interview him on Magical Medical Tour.
Oh, growing up in a wacky childhood. Oh, this has been a wonderful moment, Dr. Woolman. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And thanks
Yes.
everybody for listening to us. I want to thank my healers and my teachers for keeping me on my journey. And thank you at Yoga Hub and Christina at Segovia and all those that are making Magical Medical Tour and Trinity of Life and Flowing into Awareness all something that's helping our global community. And until next week, when we travel through another quadrant of the healthcare galaxy, I wish you all optimal health.
Thank you, Dr. Glenn Woolman, for another wonderful moment of sleep. And of course, we would like to thank each and every one of you for joining us in this new platform of information and education. We're always grateful for your continuous support, and we look forward to hearing your feedback on how we can serve you better. We invite you to connect with Dr. Woolman through his own site at glennwoolman.com, where I do encourage you to learn about his metaphor square breath. You know, that really helps calm you down at the end of a day or through any stresses of the day. So I really recommend you check that out on his site. And of course, we're always grateful for your feedback, suggestions, comments, questions. Please be sure to type them into the comment box or give us a call at 818-LETS-TALK. 818-LETS-TALK. So we look forward to having you join us the next time. Until then, namaste. Kabir, I have a question. What is oil pulling?
Oh, well, you after cleansing the tongue, then gargle with a little salt water, and then take about a tablespoon of traditionally sesame oil. If you have a infection, a tooth infection, or some type of infection, maybe in the mouth, you could use coconut oil, which has more antiviral, antibacterial qualities. But generally, a sesame oil is what's used. And you put it in your mouth